you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." And Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ and the Son of God who is coming into the world."
Amen. We have a few people that are going to share some remembrances, and Karen, you're going to start.
I'm actually reading something that my sister Ella wrote, and I agreed to read it. It's about my mother's life. Lois Marjorie Wicks was born in September 1920 in Queens Village, New York. Her mother was from a family of German immigrants. Her father was a descendant of Charles I of England, who was buried at Windsor Castle. The rest of the family decided to get out of town around the time that Charles was beheaded. So they came to the New World in the early 1600s. Mom was offered an invitation to join the Daughters of the American Revolution, but she declined. Mom grew up in Valley Stream, then her family moved to Lindenhurst. She played field hockey in high school and entered the local beauty pageant, where she was named Miss Lindenhurst in 1936. She was a member of the professional synchronized swim team at Venice Beach. When she was 21, she married Henry Fichtner. Less than 3 months later, they were in a restaurant in New York when they got the news that Pearl Harbor had been attacked. Her younger brother, Norman, was in the Navy stationed at Pearl Harbor. It was several days before they received word that he was all right. After they got married, Mom and Dad went to work for developer William F. Carey, who had worked on the building of the Panama Canal and the rebuilding of Madison Square Garden. At the time he hired Mom and Dad, Carey was the Commissioner of Sanitation for New York City. Dad was his chauffeur, butler, and trusted aide. Mom was their maid. They worked for him in New York, Palm Beach, Florida, and Palm Springs, California. They bought a 4-room house in Copiague for $5,000 and had 5 children. The first, a girl, died at birth. 3 more girls came along, Lauren, Karen, and Ella. Then finally, the prince. Dad created bedrooms out of space in the attic to accommodate the growing family. And the backyard was filled with chickens, beagles, and the occasional unwanted cat. When her children were at school, Mom worked part-time as a legal secretary and joined several bowling leagues where she regularly bowled over 200. When Ella was 5, she shattered her elbow. After several surgeries and months in casts, the doctors said she would never be able to straighten her arm. But Mom had other ideas. She made Ella carry her 16-pound bowling ball around the house every day, and her arm straightened out. Mom and Dad were both champion roller skaters and had their pictures on the wall of the skating rink in Levittown. Mom broke her arm twice. Once when she took Chuck's Cub Scout pack to the roller skating rink and tripped over a scout who had fallen. And once when she was walking her 2 dachshunds, Rusty and Fluffy. They ran around her in circles and tied her up with the leash, and she fell over. It was one of those things you'd laugh at if you saw it on a cartoon. Mom had a witty and dry sense of humor. She explained that there were lights on the front of the vacuum, so she could see where she was vacuuming in case the lights went out. When she realized what she'd said, she started laughing hysterically and couldn't stop. They sold their house in Copiague and moved to Smithtown, Hauppauge, Central Islip, and eventually to Florida, where they lived for about 30 years. Mom played the organ in church and even played the piano at her church in Florida into her late 80s. A few years ago, while she was living with Karen, she refused to play the piano and told Karen there was something wrong with it. Karen called a piano tuner who told her that although it was in tune with itself, it was not quite up to pitch, and he concluded that Mom had perfect pitch. Although it sounded fine to the rest of us, she knew that something was just not right. Mom lost her own father to cancer when she was 42 and lost her mother to a stroke 3 years later. When she came home from the hospital after her mother died, we were watching the Ed Sullivan Show. She waited until the show had ended to tell us, because she didn't want to ruin the show. We were glad to have her for much longer than we had her parents. Dad died 6 years ago, and for the past 3 years, Mom was in a nursing home, primarily because she could no longer walk. She was hard of hearing, but she was still sharp and read her Bible every day, did crossword puzzles and Sudoku, and still played a good game of Scrabble, as Dolores knows. Mom's faith in the Lord was a defining part of her life, and she passed on to her children a strong love for the Lord that reflected her heart. At the 1964 World's Fair in Queens, she worked at the Billy Graham Pavilion. She had great certainty of her eternal destiny in God's timeless kingdom, and now is reunited with her mother and father, her husband Henry, so many of her friends and family, and finally, she's spending time with her first child, Marjorie. We will miss you, Mom, and we'll see you on the other side.
Amen.